Yo, the name's Arclight Borealis. Like you, I'm just a normal guy. But let's imagine if something strange happened. If you obtained power beyond your wildest dreams, then how would you use it? Do you use it to become a devil who would destroy the world? Or, perhaps, would you become a hero who would save the world from any peril? I, Arclight Borealis, and Nephilim Blackburn received such fearsome power. And this power is the Fearsome Podcast swelling with recommendations. Super Audio Robo Podcast Z-Hen!
Perfect. No notes. Great. That was a good opening. I'm glad we started off strong. This is the energy we need for this podcast.
It's the energy that we need for this episode especially.
Oh, yeah, because we've been waiting to talk about this one for a bit.
Yeah, 13 episodes in, and we're finally getting to, at least what it is for me personally, my favorite mecha anime of all time. And that is, its full title, Shin Mazinger Shougeki, Z-Hen. Or as we tend to refer in the shorthand, Shin Mazinger Z, a 2009 anime directed by the GOAT Yasuhiro Imagawa, and quite possibly just one of the best versions of the Mazinger Z story ever conceived, really.
It is definitely, this is something we can both recommend with no maybe one big caveat, but we'll get to that later. But otherwise, we would wholeheartedly recommend this one to a lot of people.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we can't just end the podcast there by just saying, it's great, fucking watch it. We gotta talk about more things, yes, obviously.
So why don't you tell us about this one, then, Ark?
Alright, synopsis time. You know how this goes. Alright. Koji Kabuto is a Japanese high school student who one day inherits the final legacy of his grandfather, Dr. Juzo Kabuto, a giant robot made of super alloy Z called Mazinger Z. It's a familiar story on the surface, as Koji must fight against the forces of Dr. Hell using his newfound power. But what lies before him is much more complex than that, as secrets of the past between Dr. Hell, photon power, and ancient civilizations are unraveled, as the nature of Mazinger Z is revealed to be more mythical than once thought. A classic story reimagined to celebrate the true essence of the original super robot.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it, yep.
Because you just see, all you really need to see is like key visuals of like this anime and see that everything about it is designed to look as much of a throwback to like the style and sensibilities of like 70s anime and manga, you know, the original Mazinger anime that spawned all of this, really, but it's got so much more going on under the surface at the same time.
Yeah.
So we might as well get into some of the background. Time for the prehistory section. Shin Mazinger Z, which I guess just as, you know, as we said as much, like this is the shorthand we tend to agree on, and as such, we're basically going to refer to this as Shin Mazinger Z for the entire duration of this episode. Like, you know it's referring to the full title, and we are not referring to its international title, which we'll get to a little bit later. But Shin Mazinger Z was a brand new TV anime in the Mazinger franchise in 2009. And as far as like anime made to broadcast on TV, like I had to double check to make sure, because I know we had like OVAs like Majin Kaiser before this. This was the first time Mazinger would be on TV again since the 70s.
Yeah, it's crazy that there has not been a single Mazinger anime since then, like, or at least since Grandizer?
Yeah, stuff that like would actually air on TV, but obviously that just shows like how much there was a bit of a deadlock due to like kind of like a troubled relation between Dynamic Pro and Toei.
Yeah.
But it's at least a good thing that eventually all got, you know, settled afterwards. But with this being a new TV anime, and in 2009, a little callback for anyone that has been following our podcast up to this point and remembers the last episode, this coincided with a new manga bearing a similar title that very same year, Shin Mazinger Zero.
Yeah.
And both were all working towards the same idea of new, modern reimaginings of the original Go Nagai manga. manga slash anime, I guess, depending on whether you're going with Z or Zero. Because Zero, you could definitely tell, is like pulling a lot of deep cuts specifically from the anime side of the franchise.
Yeah.
Whereas by contrast, Shin Mazinger Z leans so much more into not only the well-known, but even like the more obscure history of Mazinger's time as a manga, because there was a lot that came out even after the 70s in print. So as we mentioned, the show would be directed by Yasuhiro Imagawa. We say he's the GOAT because he had already made a name for himself up to this point as a very accomplished director of other super robot anime. You know, with like the common points in a lot of them is that they often stay true to like the style, aesthetics, sensibilities of like their source material, but infused with a shit ton of character drama to it that makes everything about those works a lot deeper than what it might seem on the surface. And his most notable works that we can list off, to name a few, at least 2 of these will have episodes in the future. One of them, Mobile Fighter G Gundam, the Gundam entry in which he was tasked by Tamino himself to destroy Gundam. That's a hell of a mission statement. The other is Tetsujin 28 Go, which was a 2004 anime based on the seminal remote control robot by Mitsuteru Yokoyama, but arguably his most famous, and the one that you could probably draw the most comparisons to with Shin Mazinger Z, is Giant Robo the Animation, The Day the Earth Stood Still. This was an OVA, pretty much existed throughout like the 90s practically, due to how like the release schedule on its episodes ended up working out. But it was the sort of thing where it was more than just, just a retelling of the source material, because for its time, actually one big crossover, not unlike that you would see in a lot of other Go Nagai works.
Yeah.
As that would imply, obviously Shin Mazinger Z follows in that same path of we're pulling in quite a few characters from so many different reference points. Not as much, I would say, as far as what Shin Mazinger Zero did, because some of those were some insane deep pulls, if you remember.
Yeah, I do, but there's still some there's some pulls in this one still.
The ones that you at least can recognize that are the most prominent they all happen to be ones that get pulled from Violence Jack, or at the very least, the Violence Jack versions of characters that had existed in like random one-shots that Go Nagaya put together in the late 60s or something. But I think what's more interesting than that, than pulling in Violence Jack characters and recontextualizing them as part of the Mazinger universe, is that there are also many references to lesser known Mazinger manga, and even a canceled project or two that worked its way into the core of this anime.
When we said there's some deep pulls, there's some deep pulls. Like, this is someone who has done their research for this series.
It's basically been the prerequisite for just about any animated Mazinger work from the 2000s onward.
Yeah, it's so funny, like, how anytime there's a new Mazinger thing, they always go, like, it's not just Mazinger, it has to be everything related to Mazinger and Go Nagai in a way.
Yeah, everything about it is just put together in a way where no one wants to phone it in, like, fortunately. Like, no one is looking at this project as something to just take on in order to get a paycheck.
Yeah. So I think, like, that's why I know I talk about Gundam a lot, but Gundam's like goes up and down in quality. But I feel like with Mazinger, if there's a new Mazinger out, then that's something you pay attention to. That's like, oh, I gotta check that out. That's going to be interesting, at least. There's going to be something there.
Oh, definitely. Yes. There's quite a lot in there as far as like what the show decides to pull in from like the greater Mazinger and Go Nagai mythos overall. And as this is a modern Dynamic Pro anime adaptation of this time, that also means our favorite supergroup has to be providing music in some capacity.
Hell yes.
Yeah, and this is also kind of an interesting one in this regard with how the openings are set up, because you would be surprised, for something that looks so much like the 70s anime, the soundtrack and even the openings do not sound anything like they are being made to remind you of the original Toei anime. Like, there is no instance of the original Mazinger Z theme in sight.
Nope.
Instead, you got Jam Project coming in. They did the second opening, that was entirely them with what was their core lineup. You know, you got Kageyama, Masaki Endo, Yoshiki Fukuyama, like obviously all there. Masami Okui, and fuck, I'm forgetting the last guy's name. I know that he's like that he's done like a shit ton of like the openings for One Piece, I guess was like his main contribution. But also Ricardo Cruz, who is like a Brazilian that's like a part-time singer because he's a big anime song fan. But yeah, it's like those six in charge of like the second opening. But what about the first opening? Well, that's where it gets extra interesting. Because it was handled as a group effort between Jam Project and Hironobu Kageyama's old band Lazy, which he had been a member of since at least, if not the late 70s, then at least like the early 80s, like stuff where like they had been around for a long time and decided to basically expand the reach of their supergroup to combine both artists so that the first opening, Kajite Night, would be attributed to Ultimate Laser for Mazinger.
You know, sure. It's a great fucking opening.
It's a great opening, for sure. And it kind of shows that, yeah, sometimes you don't need to go for the obvious nostalgia route of just doing another version of the classic Mazinger Z theme.
Yeah.
Mostly because I think no one would be able to, like, accept any version that wasn't sung by Ichiro Mizuki.
Exactly. Yeah, pretty much.
And also, it kind of reminds me of how it's like. I feel like there are some people out there that have a stick up their ass about the idea of Cutie Honey somehow having like an opening theme that is not the original Cutie Honey theme. Even though I think Cutie Honey Universe proved that you can actually do that just fine.
It's still good. You could still have other... The Cutie Honey theme is iconic, but you could have other themes. It's fine.
Yeah, you can have other themes that like capture the spirit of like what that character and that story is about.
Yeah, and also
it works.
And also I think Kanji Knight and The Guardian are both like more fitting themes than if they had just remixed the original like opening, because these themes kind of represent the show in a way, or the tone.
Yeah, like the mythical angle of everything and just the well, I guess the impact that everything has.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, if we wanna pull like a word that is like a direct translation of part of the title, Shougeki in this instance can mean impact. And that's a very apt way to describe everything in this show.
It definitely has an impact. And here's another thing about I know when you mentioned his name, the director Imagawa, is all of his works are very, very big, like in scope, in storytelling, in drama. And you see that here. It's like everywhere.
Definitely, yeah. With everything that is around for this anime, just all the pieces that are put together. The anime would air on Japanese TV from April 4th to September 26th, 2009. Just a good old classic 26-episode season. The way it should be, damn it.
Yep. I can't imagine this show is a 13-episode anime.
No. Oh, it'd be so much more frustrating.
Yeah.
That said, though, it would go unlicensed internationally for like several years before being picked up by the saviors of retro anime, Discotek.
Thank you, Disco.
As they would release it. Unfortunately, with the significantly lesser name of Mazinger Edition Z. I really do not know what the logic behind it is. I at least seem to read that I think that name and like how it got translated, I think might have been a mandate from Dynamic Pro themselves, which makes me go, why?
Why? That's a weird name. I don't understand. Sure.
I get it, like, because the Z-Hen part of the original title, like, you translate that, it's Chapter Z. This is the anime that is telling the Z chapter of the overall Mazinger story, like, that you typically get. But at the same time, Shin Mazinger, man.
Yeah.
This shit had a manga, admittedly with a very, very different plot, going side by side. That manga and this anime bearing that same prefix was a fucking mission statement.
Yeah. Oh, well, at least it got fucking localized. At least people can watch it now.
Yeah, it's good that we can actually get back to something where it's like, hey, not only do we recommend this, finding where to watch this is super easy now.
Yeah. Don't worry, y'all. We got you covered here.
But an extra thing regarding this, Not just the fact that this anime aired in 2009, it's what came after 2009. It's with this anime that for a time, Shin Mazinger Z became the de facto representative for the Mazinger series in Super Robot Wars, starting with Z2.
We're gonna get into it later, but man, am I glad they picked up Shin Mazinger as the replacement, because those writers do work on their series, especially if a work happens to be unfinished. Well, kind of.
Finished and unfinished. It's a bit more complex, but
yes.
But also, this is Imagawa we're talking about. Are we really going to say Giant Robo, the animation, is finished?
It's not. No, it seems to be a problem he has, because I think he even worked on like Shin Getter, the first 3 episodes. And then what happened afterwards?
It's a bit of a problem. But regardless, from the first Z2 all the way to Super Robot Wars X, you could expect Shin Mazinger Z to be in there in some form, including a version of Great Mazinger, because why not? You gotta find more things that you can, more blood to squeeze out of this rock of a 26 episode anime season.
Also, if you have a bingo card open up, just circle or us mentioning Super Robot Wars again, because here's the other thing. It's I'm gonna just mention this right now, because I don't know any other chance we're gonna mention this, but not only do we have a Shin Great Mazinger in Super Robot Wars, they even gave him an upgrade. They gave him his own Mazen Kaiser with what was his name? Mazen Emperor?
Mazen Emperor G.
Yeah.
Yes. Which is wild. And in relation to another manga, I'm like, man, I can't believe they gave Tetsuya 2 great Majin Kaisers.
I know.
Super Robot Wars gave him one, and then a different manga literally gave him one.
He needed that upgrade. It's been a while. It's been a long time coming for him.
Man, just so much great stuff. We're getting all over the place. We better get back on track.
I know, we're just too excited to talk about this anime, and just in general.
It means a lot.
Yeah.
It really does. Yeah, so with that out of the way, we gotta get into our primary mecha and characters. As always, so many of these robots and these characters are things that you already recognize if you have seen our first overview episode about the Mazinger franchise, or are familiar with having watched multiple Mazinger anime or read multiple manga. But at least we can cover a few things that kind of stand out in this show when it comes to the mecha. Mazinger Z itself, seemingly very similar on the surface, but there are some differences. Less so in the visual design. It is in fact very faithful to how it looked, in basically going off of designs from the manga, because as you'll find, there are no dark blue forearms or legs. This is not the Toei version.
Yeah.
It's even got the red outlines around the eyes. It is very much evoking stuff from the manga. In fact, I think specifically the most accurate, I guess, reference point you could say that this Mazinger has to a manga version is a one-shot that was drawn by Ken Ishikawa in the early 2000s called Mazinger Z Reign of Terror. It actually factors into another part of the primary mecha section, but before that, Mazinger Z in this anime, surprisingly limited on its amount of armaments.
Yeah.
It's they basically stripped it down to what were essentially identified as the core abilities you need any Mazinger Z to have, and then just amped up the impact that every single one of these attacks can have.
Yep.
Including the piddliest weapon that Mazinger Z has always had before this, which was the photon beam. Now it's a fucking WMD practically.
Yeah, it's a fucking nuclear weapon. The moment he pulls that out, I was like, oh, that's where we're heading with this show, huh? I see.
Yeah.
I also thought it was just really funny that whenever you see that attack in Super Robot Wars, you just see him just turn up a dial, and that's it. That's how you get.
Turn up the dial real slowly to ratchet up that anticipation.
Hell yes.
Yeah, turn the dial, watch it change colors. There's a brief flash as a faster-than-light beam shoots out, and then there's practically a nuclear explosion at the end of it. Otherwise, you still got your rocket punch, you got your rust hurricane, you got your breast fire. What more do you need?
You don't need.
I guess I would like if we had gotten an iron cutter or drill missile, but whatever. It's fine. He at least still has the Scrander. You know, you gotta have that moment where Mazinger gets its wings, but then he gets even better wings after, because he gets what's called the God Scrander. What does the God Scrander have? It's a mystery. We're saving that for the spoiler section, because we're gonna be here all day if we just start talking about that one thing.
Yes, we're watch the anime yourself if you want to know.
Yeah, and if you couldn't tell from that little tease, yes, our spoiler discussion is going to be all about the set of episodes in which the God Scrander is revealed. Like it's a late series thing that comes in, and even it's like the idea behind it is one of those things where it actually goes back to a canceled Mazinger entry. Like that's how old this idea is, that Shin Mazinger finally was like, yes, our time is now.
Okay, I know we don't usually talk about our spoiler section, but this is going to be the one spoiler section where we're just going to be vibrating and going, yeah. We're that fucking hype for this anime, y'all. Yeah. Anyways, what about the rest of the mechas?
So, naturally, Mazinger Z still has to be fighting mechanical beasts. You still gotta have your Kikaijus. They're still here, all the classic ones. One thing that they do like to emphasize a lot, even more so, the ties that the mechanical beasts have to, their ancient civilization predecessors, the Mikine, or Mykenai. I think it's supposed to be Mikine Empire. It's weird, I almost always default to calling it Mykenai, but that just makes my brain think I'm saying Mykenikes or something, and I'm like, that's a very different thing.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. The Mikine Empire, antagonists in, another Mazinger story that's technically supposed to come after this. But there are two things that kind of stand out about it. One is, you do get to see in one particular story arc, sometimes in certain Mazinger Z stories, you get an instance where Dr. Hell basically takes the two classic mechanical beasts, Garda K7, Douglas M2, and just kid bashes the two of them together. Shin Mazinger, meanwhile, to lead back into how much more mythical a lot of the background of this show is, turns out that kid bashed version of Garda and Douglas was actually their original form.
Of course.
You get to see what is called Garadubla, and yeah, it is a massive fucking hulking beast of Kikaiju. But the other side of the mechanical beast is obviously the fact that, they have to be controlled by something, at least that they were controlled by this stuff in the past. Well, that's where the Kedora come in. And I mentioned the name of the one-shot, Mazinger Z Reign of Terror. That was the manga that they came from. They were essentially biomechanical monsters where in the one-shot, there was a whole ordeal of one of them getting a hold of Mazinger and hijacking it, turning it basically into a demon. Because otherwise, they were meant to be practically the things that pilot the mechanical beasts naturally, as opposed to the extra science shit that Dr. Hell basically bolted onto them so that they would be under his control. And yeah, that subplot, it is 1-to-1 in a lot of instances to Mazinger Z Reign of Terror, even down to the point where Dr. Hell realizes that this is as much a problem for him as it is his enemies.
Yep, he was not ready for this.
Definitely not. That's why you got to be careful digging deeper and deeper into an artificial island that you have turned into your home base without realizing what's inside it. But speaking of the Mikine Empire, there's one last aspect to it, and we might as well highlight a specific member of the Mikine Empire, because a lot of the major players, they're basically giant biomechanical beings, and that is Zeus. Yes, we have the Greek gods in this show, but they are nothing like the Greek gods that you are familiar with.
Nope. Yes, this is literally Zeus, by the way. Or not literally, it's the Mazinger's version of Zeus.
With a silhouette that looks very much like Mazinger Z was inspired by it. The crown, head shape, the spikes, everything about it, really. And this is another deep pull from a Mazinger manga that is from the kind of the lesser known days of the franchise, a late 90s manga called Z Mazinger. Yeah, they just swapped the name and the letter around, but I guess it makes enough sense.
I guess.
But the idea was that, what if Mazinger Z was just the reanimated body of the mechanical god Zeus? Because Zeus basically pulled a Sparta and decided to betray his brethren for the sake of mankind. I've seen the first chapter of Z Mazinger that has gotten translations. I have not been able to find any subsequent ones, but at least the first chapter has some goddamn amazing like full page and like 2-page spreads of Zeus in his prime just cleaving through a shit ton of like mechanical beasts and other Mycenaeans in ways where it's like, if you've watched this anime and then you read that first chapter, you're like, yep, that's the same shot. Same design and everything.
Of course. I know about this manga. I just never read it myself because it's so hard to find other than that first chapter.
Yeah. I'm always so grateful. It is always a blessing when some scan later comes out with like, not if not a whole series, then at least a single chapter or a one-shot in Go Nagai's portfolio, because it's like, yes, this is important for like the preservation of this medium, that you not only have scans of this, but you have also made it readable to people that aren't Japanese.
In fact, there's a lot of the works from the Getter Robo manga which are not translated, which is a shame. I really want to read those.
Yes, same here. Yeah. But yes, Zeus, a very important figure in the backstory. Very cool design as well, I am just gonna say as well. Oh, it is no coincidence at all, though, when it is pointed out very early on in the series that yes, Mazinger Z does bear a striking resemblance to Zeus, which I do like that angle, especially as a contrast to what we talked about with Shin Mazinger Zero last week, where that was pretty much dealing all completely with the danger of what happens when Mazinger Z becomes a devil. Here, we get a version of Mazinger that just embraces the side of it being a god, because it is literally built from the remains of a god. There's also other gods from that same time period, like Hades. Hades is a big one that factors into more setup for Great Mazinger, but that's another thing entirely. That's pretty much our mecha out of the way for the time being. Like, everything else to do with like the super robots you get on the side of the Photon Power Labs, they're all the same. Even the Mazinger army, like the weird manga exclusive robots that you never really saw outside of that. But for our characters, it's a good mix of Violence Jack immigrants and new fleshed out versions of characters that already existed, but maybe not in the same capacity that you remember them.
Yeah.
For instance, we have our actual protagonist of the show, Baron Ashura.
We're not kidding, by the way.
No, we're not. Even episode 16, the start of it, frames it as such while doubling as a Devilman reference.
Yeah.
As he does the exact same monologue in front of a black background about, up to this point, you have been following my journey through this show, but now you're about to experience the real hell. And it's like, yeah, Baron Ashura's life is suffering.
I'd say Baron Ashura, 99% of Mazinger media is just like the flunky that just gets their ass kicked a lot. Here they're an actual character. They got an arc and everything. It's insane. You
even get to know about the two people that they previously were before they got fused down the middle. Tristan and Isolde. They were basically two humans that were serving as envoys for the Mycenaean Empire when they were basically outposted on Earth, subjugating the other humans around them. They were actually good buddies with Archduke Gorgon, if you could believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just the whole time you're like, man, everything to do with Baron Ashura, you will be surprised how often they interact with the main characters, and how in a number of instances those interactions are not actually antagonistic or trying to kill each other.
Yeah, they have actual death this time. Incredible, actually.
It turns out the one who actually becomes the flunky in this show more than anything is the fucking Dullahan Nazi Count Brocken.
It's Brocken. Brocken turns into the comedy villain guy, which is funny, I think.
Deserved.
It's deserved also, yes.
So next on our list of characters, we have Nishikiori Tsubasa, who is the mistress of the Kuragane House, which is basically like a ryokan onsen, basically one of those traditional Japanese inns, who has a mysterious past of her own, is a very, very fine, if not extremely morally ambiguous woman. She's also Koji's mom.
Oh yeah, she's Koji's mom. Hey, Koji. I know your mom can kill me, but I'm just asking. Do you think she's looking for anybody? Sorry. I get one moment during this podcast.
Damn, Koji, your mom's bad.
I might love Tsubasa a whole lot, in case that wasn't obvious.
I do as well, least of all because of like her design, because of just how much like she is so Yakuza boss's wife as hell, even though she does not have a husband, or at least not a husband that is around at this time. Because I mean, she's Koji's mom. We already know who the dad is.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other thing with Kenzo, but he doesn't appear nearly as much as Tsubasa, as, she gets introduced very early on. She has ties with Juzo naturally, as he was a frequent patron at their onsen. And basically, like, even if she's not acting very motherly, she more or less ends up being the guardian for, her actual kids again anyway, having to, letting them stay at the Kurogane house, serve as a mentor, even if she is a bit of a hard ass of a mentor. But she has secrets of her own. A lot of the adults in this anime have secrets, not unlike the adults in the Giant Robo OVA, which is, again, very similar to how character drama focused this show is. But at least Tsubasa, she may not be much of a fighter, though she does get the drop on you with a knife. Yeah, you're fucked.
Yeah.
But she does have backup of her own. She has very loyal servants in the form of the Kurogane 5. And for a show that has some great robot fights, it also has you well served in terms of just the badass normals that can just fight against dudes on foot.
Yeah, here's the other thing about Imagawa that you noticed in his works is, man, that guy really loves martial arts and hand-to-hand combat.
Oh, yeah. Like, G Gundam has that obviously in spades, a lot of wuxia and Hong Kong martial arts influence. Same thing in Giant Robo, the animation. Not as much, or of any, I can recall that was in Tetsujin 28. I think that just leaned the most into the drama and character talking side of things. But yes, Shin Mazinger Z, we definitely have just non-robot pilots like actually kicking ass the whole time. And the Kurogane 5 is a good example of that, because you have the members of the Kurogane 5, servants of Tsubasa, that are all outfitted with some manner of super alloy Z-coated weaponry or other armaments. There's Cross, who's a big bald guy, and where his super alloy Z trait is that his whole body, he has a fucking alloy Z endoskeleton.
Yeah.
That part of it is, I believe a reference to one of the characters in Abashiri family, who actually was just a straight up cyborg. But other characters include Yasu, who's a normal-ish looking dude, short hair, has big glasses. His full title is Yasu the Weasel, because he looks exactly like a fucking snake oil salesman.
Sure does.
But at least he's friendly, though. Even if it is when he has those glasses and he's clasping his hands together and he has that smile, and it's like, are you really? but he's at least got little mini super alloy Z bombs as his weapons. Then there's Sensei, who does not speak, wears a kind of a scarf mask around his lower face, and unsurprisingly, with this dude wielding a katana, yes, the katana is coated in super alloy Z. It could cut through anything.
Of course it would be.
These first three characters, all by the way, along with Nishikiori Tsubasa, are from Violence Jack, by the way. Their designs specifically that I'm referring to. But as far, I'll get back to Tsubasa because I forgot one specific detail. But before then, the remaining Kurogane 5, you have Django, a very, very thin cowboy, has a sombrero, a poncho, and he has revolvers that shoot super alloy Z bullets. So he's very weird and creepy, though. And if it's no surprise, yes, it is. His name is based on the Western character of the same name from all those old Westerns in the 60s.
They are not hiding their
and lastly,
inspirations. But yeah, let's go on.
Yeah, you got Kikunosuke, who's a little old granny and the one that you would think doesn't actually fight. But no, she's super agile and she fights with super alloy Z coated Garrote wires.
Also, she gets some anime, they have some ladies have some physics in certain places. They gave her some physics. It's just in her giant cheekbones instead.
You actually could have just ended it in her giant cheeks and just said nothing and leave all of our listeners guessing.
Shit.
But no, you're correct. Like her cheeks, because of how old and tiny she is, obviously her face is sagging, so that's where you see it with with her cheeks on her face. Yeah, that's the Kurogane 5, all led by Tsubasa, who, as we mentioned, her design and demeanor are from Violence Jack, but Tsubasa technically was a character from a previous Go Nagai manga years before that called Gorilla High. It's a weird fucking thing, and all you really need to know about the Tsubasa in that particular story is that her design is she's like a gang leader that rides on a motorcycle. And you would think, oh, okay, delinquent with a motorcycle outfit. That makes sense. Well, no, the only part of the outfit that makes sense is the helmet and I guess the gloves. But because all she has is a helmet, gloves, boots, and the G-string.
That is, you know what? No, this is what I expect from Go Nagai. No, this is the kind of shit I'd expect. I'm not even shocked.
There was an old image on Pixiv I remember from years and years ago, and I can't be bothered to navigate that fucking website anymore to try and find it. Mm-hmm. But I know there was one that basically played on the idea that these are both versions of Tsubasa.
Yeah.
So they had one where it was the Shin Mazinger Z version dressed up as her Gorilla High version and just heel stomping Dr. Hell in the face.
Oh no. Or oh yes, I don't know how to feel about this. Oh no.
I don't know. The Kurogane 5 were in the background and they are very much going, oh yes.
Damn, now I will.
It is such a cursed image, by the way, as you could imagine.
Thank you, Pixiv artists, for giving us this, I guess.
Yeah. It'll be forever seared in my brain. But to finish up on our characters, we have Inspector Ankokuji, who is a original manga exclusive character that was basically another one of Koji's allies, more or less, but considering that this was from a Go Nagai manga and had no appearance whatsoever in the Toei anime, that means his appearance and his behavior obviously leaves him to come off as being you would be hard pressed to think he was a good guy at all, considering A, he's a cop, and B, at least in the manga, Shiro makes the joke on a number of occasions that he looks like he's got ties with the Yakuza. Because he's got an inspector outfit, he's got sideburns, rounded face, all kinds of stuff, and especially with kind of how it's framed in the beginning with him investigating all the weird stuff happening in Atami, and even some early confrontations with Koji, that you are kind of unsure at the start, is he going to be one of the good guys? Turns out yes, but he's also kind of a goof.
Yeah.
Next character, this one actually pulling from the anime of all things. We got Viscount Pigman as probably the best version of this particular minion of Dr. Hell we have ever seen. Because traditionally, when it comes to Dr. Hell's forces, they're always led by two people under him.
Yeah.
Baron Ashra and Count Brocken. Mm-hmm. They were there in the manga, and they are basically a prerequisite for every Mazinger story, unless it's Mazen Kaiser, in which case they decided, nah, Brocken, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
But Pigman is an interesting one, because the idea is that, in the original, he was this very pale, short little, shaman dude. I believe, his original design was, he had, a full-grown human-sized body, but then on the neck stump was Pigman's actual torso, arms, and head. It was a very weird design. As a tribal spirit and everything, which is definitely a choice.
It's something.
Some of that's still in there.
Yeah.
Some of that's still in there, but at least with Pigman in his true form, it's only just the small body that you would have seen attached to the larger body's neck stump.
Right.
But that's not what makes Pigman cool in this. It's his disguise. It's his outer form that he actually uses, in which Jim Mazinger gets to appear again, turning Viscount Pigman into a fucking menacing black dude. Straight up blinds himself because due to Tsubasa's past, she actually worked with Dr. Hell before. She was responsible for creating a lot of his minions, but at least was able to put in like biological safeguards that made it so that they could not physically harm her. Especially pigmen, like, could not physically harm her. So he decided, fuck it, I'm just going to gouge out my own eyes and like bleed and like cry tears of blood that ends up making my face look like Jim Mazinger.
Just fucking raw, actually.
And as you watch this, you'll find his method of attack is very, very different from Ashura or Bracken's, because he does not rely on mechanical beasts. He relies entirely on his shaman magic. He will utilize curses and nature to fuck your shit up.
Yeah, they basically just took a kind of nothing character and made him like the most menacing and threatening like side villain so far.
It's really good. I like Pigman for like the few times that he's like given opportunities to flex in the show. And then you have the narrator.
Yeah, the narrator is a character. We're counting him.
He gives 110% like everyone else in this cast. It counts.
One of the best narrators in any anime, IMO.
Oh, it just gives so much flavor to everything. Even like when no other characters are talking, the narrator is going to be picking up the slack.
Yeah.
Like, I think the only other narrator in anime that might have come close to this after the fact would be like the narrator that constantly shows up in like the David Productions JoJo's anime.
Oh yeah, no, that's another top tier narrator.
That narrator is a wonderful ham, all right.
Oh yeah.
So without going, I think it's.
Yeah,
I mean, you could probably guess why we recommend, but we better keep going through our notes because we gotta maintain decorum here. Damn it!
We have
So why do we recommend?
Yeah, why do we recommend
Shin Mazinger Z?
Mm-hmm.
This anime, it bears all the hallmarks of something that you would see directed and written by Yasuhiro Imagawa, because it's got the reverence for its source material on full display, even down to pulling from the lesser-known sides of the entire franchise. But even the way that the story is told, like, I feel for Shin Mazinger Z in particular, the story is told in a manner that you're never being shown all the important details when they would normally be shown chronologically.
Right.
They will very deliberately, like, keep you in the dark after a scene transition, making you think this is what actually came after, or they might just jump ahead to the aftermath immediately and just be like, hold on, what the fuck happened, before eventually getting the explanation as characters get like the correct time to reminisce about it. And like, the first episode of this anime is especially a doozy, as it starts in media res, but even in that episode, it's not a traditional in media res where it is like, you know, you would expect it to just show events from the middle or end or any other point like exactly as they were in order. Instead, it's like it's still scrambling up a bunch of events from multiple episodes completely out of context to essentially create its own context.
Yeah.
Like, it gets at the general idea of this is what the story is going to build up to, but as you watch it, you'll be like, hold on, I saw that in the first episode and I'm only halfway through.
Yeah, it does a really good way of just like using the concept of like non-linear storytelling in really clever and fun ways.
Mm-hmm. There's a mystery that it builds up, and even when you end up knowing the truth of that mystery, it's not going to undermine the story on a rewatch. It's actually going to make you appreciate it that much more, because you're now looking more for the signs that are being hinted at in those moments where a first-time viewer would not have the context. And we've definitely talked a lot about how like there's some amazingly over-the-top shit in this anime, but I think surprisingly, in terms of like the scale of the conflict and like the overall stakes, especially when you compare this to Shin Mazinger Zero that we talked about last week, like this is surprisingly small scale. Like, it makes a strong case for how you don't need to have like your super robot anime always be like a universe-ending affair. Like, you won't see planets explode, but you will see a single rocket punch be given the exact gravitas it deserves. In fact, that's what happens with the very first rocket punch.
Oh, and the narrator fucking lets you know that, how big this moment is.
So big, this moment of a fist ejecting into a Kikaichu's face as it slowly tears it apart.
And you see it in multiple camera angles.
As it says over and over, its name is, before Koji finally says the name.
Yeah, like this is the complete opposite of Mazinger Zero, where Mazinger Zero is the most you could escalate things. And this is like more of a, I guess, like lower stakes. I mean, lower stakes compared to a lot of other mecha anime around this time, I feel.
Yeah, like Dr. Hell's still set on world conquest,
Yeah.
but he specifically needs to attack Atami first because that's where the Photon Power Labs are. So it naturally leads to the feeling of it being very small scale, that so much of the anime continues to take place in this one town that Koji protects.
Yeah. And we're never going to like space or anything.
Definitely no space, not yet. That would require us to get Shin Grendicer, but obviously we got Grendicer U like last year, and like enough time has passed that it's like, yeah, it's fine. Yeah. Part of me would like to think that Imagawa would have enough reverence for the entire Mazinger franchise that if he was given the opportunity, he would eventually get to making a Shin Grendicer. I would like to see what his take on that would be. But even so, for anyone that wants to get a Mazinger Z like anime experience that like pulls from the original manga, you know, the original source work of Go Nagai, and even like the not 100% the tone, because Go Nagai can get real filthy when he wants to. Like, at least like the spirit of what Mazinger was about, even in the original manga itself. Like, this is the best starting point next to the original Majin Kaiser. I'd still say it's arguably more so because you at least have like a lot more faithful like representation of like the 70s like art style and aesthetic.
Yeah.
But obviously without any of like the, you know, it's not made to look like an anime from the 70s in terms of production practices. Yeah. Like this is this is in 2009. This is in the era where digital ink practices were so much better than they were starting out in the early 2000s.
It definitely looks a lot better than most anime around like the 2000s. It looks great, actually. It still looks pretty good.
It really does, yeah.
And
now,
yeah, the elephant.
We've been waiting to get to this point.
Oh boy,
we got an elephant in the room to address with this anime and its story. But we can't really break down why that is because that would be massive fucking spoilers. All we can really say, this anime ends on a monster of a tease, and not necessarily a happy ending, except for one character. If you know, you know. It's so frustrating because it's like the initial thought to look at this is to think that like, oh, this anime is unfinished, when it's like, I've looked at it in the sense where it is like, the core story, the Z chapter, if we're going by the full title, is not unfinished. That chapter is finished. The problem lies in, if you have knowledge of the larger Mazinger mythos already, it is so obvious what was supposed to come after, and the anime is constantly hinting at that through its whole runtime.
Yeah, it still stings a little, just like thinking about what if, but yeah, like it's just one of those things you kind of got to accept because you're getting a full story. You are actually getting a full story in the end of the day, and it's worth going through it. Still, I think.
But the first time you see that ending, especially if you're being swept up in the moment of the finale like I was, like the actual ending will fucking blindside you.
Oh, yeah.
It's only when you see the ending and then you go back to clips from like the first episode and you realize, oh shit, yeah, this was actually what it was leading up to. God damn it, how did I not see this coming? And then you proceed to rewatch this over the years like I have, and then, you know, you still feel sad that you don't get it, that we're not getting a Shin grade Mazinger, but at least the ending does not sting as much.
Yeah.
You've at least come to the acceptance phase of the grieving process.
And then you just play Super Robot Wars and you just see how they continue it and how they mix Mazinger Zero into it as well. And you're like, you know what, good enough. I'll take it.
Like, rest assured, this is an anime that still tells a complete version of the Z story, and for my money, it is the best version of the Mazinger Z story itself.
Yeah.
We'll never, it'll still be a while before we ever get someone that decides to do their version of the great Mazinger story, which, you know what? Fuck it. If we were able to get an anime adaptation of Getter Robo Arc of all things without giving the same treatment to the previous chapters of the manga, I'd like to think someone could come along to Go Nagai and be like, all right, Give me the rights to make a great Mazinger anime. I'm not even going to bother with a Mazinger Z chapter beforehand. The world needs this.
Yeah, and I don't
We already let the Saudis fund us to make a new Grandizer anime. Tetsuya needs his time, damn it.
And I don't care if we have like a shoestring budget. I'm going to make it anyways. I'm going to continue it, and it's going to be acceptable. But it's going to have soul in it.
Yes, look forward to Shin Great Mazinger, directed by Jun Kawagoe. Anyway.
We are not talking about Robo
no shade against that man.
Yeah.
No shade against that man. At least when it comes to Get a Robo, that man understands the assignment better than anyone. But regardless, as we mentioned earlier on, this anime was eventually licensed internationally. It has the inferior name of Mazinger Edition Z, but it is still this exact same anime that we all love, regardless of that name change. You can find it easily on physical releases, and I believe it is still on Crunchyroll last I checked, so you have that as streaming options. Compared to so much of the other stuff we talk about on this podcast, it is fairly easy to get a hold of this anime and be able to watch it. So do that. Just watch it, because we're going to get into the next part of our podcast. You know what that is.
Yep, it's Spoilercast time! Or Spoilercast Z!
And this one's all going to be about a specific story arc of all things, and there's a lot to dig into. Stick around if you were at least curious about how, like, what are the later episodes of this anime handles things, and you want the little extra push to be like, okay, maybe I will check this out. But otherwise, I think our enthusiasm gets the point across. You should definitely watch it. Feel free to stop this podcast if you want, and just watch it. We're now going to get into our highlight discussion. God, we got a whole lot of big moments to talk about
here. Oh boy,
we
do. All right, let's get into it now then. See everybody soon.
Oh man, Tsubasa's seen worse.
Oh my god, she looks so... I mean, listen, she looks really bad, but also, I mean... She can still stab me.
She's bad, but she's bad.
She can still stab me if she wants, which I think it definitely looks like she's going to stab anybody anyways.
So our discussion is one of the rare times where we're actually going to be talking about 3 episodes, since this is an entire story arc that happens in the latter half of the anime.
Yeah.
Like, all these episodes basically have the same title. They're just designated as Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and that is Grudge, the Kurogane House Longest Day. And for brief story context, to get people caught up on, like, where this actually takes place at this point in the anime, this is after, multiple instances of fighting against Dr. Hell, beating his forces, one after the other, humiliating them. Had an entire story arc before this in which the Ghidorah made its official appearance, hijacked Mazinger, summoned the Corinthian Pillar, which acted as a means of, like, Koji, Tsubasa, and Baron Ashura going back in time, because they had to get to the core of that pillar, kill the Ghidorah before it caused a whole bunch of bad shit to happen, possibly affecting, like, the passage of time. There was a lot of stuff that all 3 of them saw in there, which kind of doesn't have them traumatized, but they're definitely in a different... They come out as different people to an extent. Although Tsubasa's gonna be, like, having some even worse shit that she has to face than what she saw in that pillar, because there's a new problem. She's seeing a ghost. But at least Boss and his cronies are doing a solid by, like, helping out at the Kurogane house. Because, 4 members of the Kurogane 5 also went in the pillar, and they also died.
Yeah, they're all fucking dead, so it's up to Boss now.
Yeah, so Boss is doing community service, and doing it for one of the baddest bitches in all of Japan, who had, like, just, like, one of the toughest, like, groups of bodyguards. Surely this will get him fast tracked to being, like, the boss of all the gangs in Japan. But yeah, Tsubasa seeing a ghost. That ghost is Tetsuya Tsurugi, and plans are in motion now as Dr. Hell realizes that, like, he needs photon power more than anything, because if he keeps digging deeper into Bardo's Island, he's going to keep finding worse and worse shit. So Pigman and Brocken have a plan, and that plan starts with them chasing after an escapee in Hakone, which gets the attention of Koji, Boss, and his cronies, Nuke and Mucha. Even though this entire chase in Hakone, as they're going after, like, a hooded individual, as it's revealed to be Baron Ashura, Brocken, even though the entire chase, the outcome was set up, having his head be used as part of Brocken Ball was not part of that.
This is what we mean when we say he becomes the joke character now.
Even though he says, in all caps, I'm a tragic character.
And, like, you just have them fucking kicking him around. And the, like, boss's whole quote of, like, my nickname is Boss. Even the author doesn't know my name. And it's okay, boss. We all know you're the real hero, though. We stan you, boss.
Even though I have seen in some manga that they have tried to give Boss a name or something, but it's like, even if that is real, no, you're still Boss. I don't care if you're Boda or whatever the fuck.
You're the boss of our hearts.
I guess it sounds similar enough to Boss.
Yeah.
So the end of the chase reveals that, yes, the person that Brocken was chasing was Ashura, escaped from Bardos Island because they were also similarly traumatized by the truths that were revealed to them inside the pillar. So now they are in the safety and custody of the Kurogane house.
Yeah,
which does not sit well with everyone.
But yeah, that's what we mean about, like, Baron Ashura having more depth, because they're on the good guy's side now. For now.
It's a very strange turn of events. Though, like, not so strange as getting a onsen scene with Baron Ashura.
Where they still have their hood on.
Yes. At least it's not the shower scene.
Yeah.
Although with Boss and Nuke and Mucha, like, hiding inside a Tanuki and peeping on them, I'm like, gee, I sure hope the scene never awoken anything strange in anyone.
I mean, with the amount of naked Baron Ashura scenes out there, I'm not saying, but you know.
Yeah, the whole thing, like aside from that moment of levity, it's like you're feeling the drama between all the characters, because it is like Saika and Professor Yumi like head over to like the inn because they hear the news, and I'm like, is this really a good idea? Shiro especially does not think this is a good idea. He is still very upset, considering it was Ashura's doing that ultimately led to like their grandpa dying, who, by the way, like when he died early on in the series, it was in the cockpit of the Powder with Koji. Talk about tragic.
Yeah, that's a little traumatic.
Even as things go on, where like Baron Ashura is like talking with everyone, like you even see them where it is like Shiro in his like rage just runs up to Ashura and starts like punching them in the gut, but like they're not even flinching, or even like they're like knowing full well, it's like, yeah, I realized I hurt you in the past. I'm just gonna let you hit me if it makes you feel better.
I deserve it.
But you at least get to hear a lot more about Tetsuya Tsurugi as he was in this canon of the Mazinger series, because it's very clear that, like, yeah, you normally would not have heard anything about Tetsuya until Great Mazinger itself was revealed, but there is no Great Mazinger in this show.
Yeah.
Instead, you get quite an amazing backstory for this guy, as you get flashbacks, multiple flashbacks, to the original expedition to Bardos Island, where it was Dr. Hell with Juzo Kabuto, his son Kenzo, Kenzo's wife, Tsubasa, and Tetsuya was there at the same time. So all five of them, they unearthed the Kadora for the first time and were horrified by the fact they could not control it. But it's okay, because Tetsuya came in with an unfinished fucking super robot, an incomplete prototype, and just smash that fucker to pieces. This is another version of him I like more than his original manga counterpart, least of all because it's like, as it will be made clear when we get to like the end of this story arc, it's like the familial relation is going to be very, very different for Tetsuya, so he's not going to have his daddy issues.
Yeah, no, this is a badass version of Tetsuya, and I'm like, this is why I'm kind of sad that there's no Shin Great Mazinger, because like, yeah, we know, we kind of have an idea of where the story would go, but I want to see what their version of Tetsuya is without like you said, the daddy issues. Like, what would that have been?
Yeah, like what would the new dynamic be between him and Koji? Yeah. Although, as far as what could have been for a Shin Great Mazinger, like a sequel season, there is at least one thing I can share, but I'm going to wait until like the very, very end, because it deals with something that we see properly introduced in the last episode of this story arc.
Boy. Yeah.
It's not like a story outline, it's more like a production draft sheet of a design that will make sense.
Yeah.
But as things go on, like just the drama being laid on so thick. You mentioned this, and I'm glad you did as well, because the word for it has also been in my head as well whenever I think about Shin Mazinger Z.
Yeah.
And that is just the tone of it feeling very operatic.
No, yeah, this is what I like about Shin Mazinger in general. It's just like, it's so operatic. Like, and I think a lot of it has to do with just how the drama is like up to like ludicrous degrees, but in such a great way. It makes everything feel so like grand and epic, and really goes with that whole mythical tone they're going with this entire series.
Yeah, especially when the music is always swelling and crescendoing like during these dramatic moments.
Yeah.
It's always the sort of thing where like I felt this with like a number of Go Nagai stories, and I've always wondered like why no one in Japan has ever thought to do this with like say Devilman as an example. But a stage theater performance
Right.
feels like it is right at home with the way Go Nagai characters tend to emote themselves, and even when they get into like expository dialogue or even monologues. I mean, we even made reference to how Baron Ashura does the exact same thing at the halfway point of the show that Akira Fudo does at the halfway point of Devilman. It is no longer just acting as if this were like a real thing. It is like he is like theater performance like acting to the back of the audience.
Yeah, I feel like it's the only like Go Nagai like future things that I can think of that did this are like this show and Devilman Crybaby. Those are the only like two shows I could think of where they took the drama theater aspect of Go Nagai stories and amplified them.
And I guess it makes sense considering Go Nagai's always had a penchant and like an appreciation for like classic Western literature or whatever. I mean, for fuck's sake, he did a manga adaptation of like Dante's Inferno.
Yeah, guy's a huge nerd, if it wasn't obvious.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell that, like, because of how old he is, he's a huge nerd for things that completely predates the medium that he works in. You know? It's the thing that lets you know he is of a different breed compared to all the other creators that we get, like, in this medium, where their influence is the medium that they're working in.
Yeah, which is, I think that's what makes his work really stand out in general.
Especially when, like, of the old guard from that time, he is, like, one of the few mangaka that is still alive after all this time.
Yeah, and I hope he still continues to be alive for a little longer, too.
Like I said, as long as he gets to about to the same age that Mel Brooks has been getting to already, then I think we're good.
Yeah.
But with all the operatics being on put on display with this episode, even a brief shot of like Pigman appearing as like an apparition specifically to taunt them, and finally reveals what's what. Like, this is the crux of the conflict that's going on. The ghost that Tsubasa is seeing, that was brought about because of Pigman basically putting a curse on her with the idea that the ghost was going to basically cause Tsubasa's life energy to wither away, basically be weighed down by what is being perceived as a grudge, because there are still secrets that she is holding from everyone else. So much of this entire story arc comes down to Tsubasa having to basically pour out her heart about all the awful shit that she did 10 years ago when she was like part of Dr. Hell's expedition, and just having to like come clean with it. And as such, the only way to really come clean and lift this curse, according to Pigman and Ashura, who realizes as much, is that they need to reveal the location of Zeus's arm, which is what Dr. Hell seeks, as it was stolen from Bardos Island. It was the thing that was used to seal it all those millennia ago when Zeus fought back against like his former colleagues and like freed humanity from like their oppression. So Dr. Hell wants the arm of Zeus, least of all for its material, and it's a source of photon power. And in order to get it back, oh boy, we get a new robot showing up. It is one hell of an entrance, as it is like a meteor just striking down on an island off the shore of Atami. Just screen flashes, sky is immediately blood red. There is a fucking inferno on that island. A robot emerges, similar in shape to Mazinger. Riding on its head is a motorcycle ridden by Kenzo Kabuto, arms folded, gaze unflinching. And that robot's name, I am not even going to try and imitate what the fucking narrator says as its introduction, so I am just going to include an audio clip now. there you go.
Thank you. I was going to ask you to include that audio clip because I remember watching this episode for the first time. I was getting into the drama and what was happening. I was invested. And then this moment happened. And I spent an entire full minute laughing my ass off because this man said it with his full chest. Like, I have never heard such a passionate cry like this before.
This is why we say the narrator is an actual character.
Exactly. Holy shit.
Oh, and it's the final thing you hear before the screen shows to be continued. Like, this anime knows exactly how to leave you on the edge of your seat at the end of an episode and excited for the next one.
I played this scene 10 times because I couldn't get enough of it. It's that good.
Oh, yeah. That is part 1 out of the way. We know what the stakes are in this story arc. On to part 2. And this is where we get to see a lot more of what Energy Z is. And I still remember, even after I watched this anime years ago, because this was the first Mazinger, well, not first, second. I watched Majin Kaiser's Skull first because I told you that story about the friend that basically helped me jump deeper into the mecha rabbit hole.
Yeah.
This was the first one that I watched of my own accord, no recommendations. I just decided this looks like the best possible modern entry point. And so after watching it all those years ago, I had to look up more info about it. And I always thought back then, and I still think it the same, that Energy Z being featured in this was the coolest deep cut ever. The prototype concept for Mazinger Z, the original robot idea Go Nagai had before he had to make specific changes due to the fear that he would be called out for ripping off Kamen Rider because the main piloting device of the robot is a motorcycle.
Yeah, the fact that something like that gets such a dramatic entrance and is such a big deal is kind of, I don't know, I feel like you will really have to have some reverence for Mazinger to do something like this in your show.
And the industry and fandom certainly does, because of you can still find even then there's a fucking solo Jokoken out there.
Yeah.
There's gotta be different model kits from or not model kits, at least figures from different companies that have taken a stab at it, because even if they don't come from an anime or manga, that's not gonna stop mecha designers from coming up with their own version of a Mazinger or pulling out a prototype version, because everyone knows that this franchise is so fundamentally important.
Oh, yeah.
And this arc is dedicated to that prototype robot.
Yeah, that's why it's one of the many reasons why we're talking about this arc instead of the other arcs for this show.
Yeah. Although those other arcs are pretty good too. Yeah. I mean, we could have done this, or we could have done the one that had to deal a lot more with Zeus, where he takes a severed arm and quote unquote rocket punches Hades in the chest face.
You forgot the part where he says, "Oh, that looks like fun. I'll do that too." That's it's fucking. I love this.
Yeah,
I love this version so much.
This episode, we're getting Mazinger versus Energer. Koji's charging into battle, telling everyone to get to safety, and you get one of those signs of Koji growing as a character. He finally addresses Tsubasa as mom.
Yeah, because before this, it was just mistress. That's the only way he referred to her as. He doesn't even see her, or he says he doesn't see her as his mom.
And Shiro's obviously taken a much longer time to get to this point as well, but eventually he does. But yeah, we gotta have a battle between robots, a battle between father and son. Kenzo continues to cut a strong figure on top of Energy Z, not even bothering with holding onto the handlebars. Really, I feel like the mustache just adds so much to just the imposingness of this whole fight.
Yeah, it's the mustache.
And all this for Zeus's arm, because of how it is the essence of Super Alloy Z that is pretty much built into Mazinger. But you get more flashbacks as well. You get to see what Energy Z did when it was finally completed back on Bardos Island, where Tetsuya is doing an actual test run with it, just smashing up a bunch of unearthed Kikaiju. because I guess like as they continue to unearth this stuff, they all started to activate. So it's like, okay, we might as well use this as the opportunity for Energer's like test run proper. And you get another call out from the narrator. It's not as strong, but it's enhanced by the fact that it has a custom title card that says Energer Z in the same style as the title card for this anime. The narrator's fucking loving this shit all the same.
Yeah, we talk about how like epic and mythic and all that the show is. It also has it has a sense of fun. It knows when to have fun, and we appreciate that about it.
Also, man, all this time during this flashback, these people really were not, like, expecting from the very first minute that a guy called Dr. Hell would fucking use this opportunity to start his plans for world domination.
Damn, like...
Although I guess Juzo probably had enough of an idea. I get the feeling that even during this whole expedition, they were bickering enough that they were like Juzo probably was like, if that guy decided he wanted to shoot me, I wouldn't be surprised, fucking prick.
God, exactly. It's like, wow, I can't believe Dr. Hell turned out to be a complete heel. But Juzo was the only one who seemed to have, like, seen through it in the end.
Yeah, and actually, like, work things out with, like, the other members of the expedition of, like, seriously, we need to have this contingency in place because Dr. Hell is going to do something really fucking stupid. You get more of that flashback. You get so much cutting back and forth between showing what happened on Bardo's Island with more scenes of Tsubasa's condition just deteriorating, as you know, especially because she's no longer the only one that's seeing Tetsuya's ghost. All of a sudden, everyone else is.
And also, like, I think we also see in this flashback that, Juzo's having his own heel turn as well. Or Kenzo. Sorry, Kenzo, not Juzo. I keep mixing them up.
Yeah.
Kenzo.
Yeah. Juzo instead loses his eye. That's how you actually get to see where he got that scar.
Yeah, you get to see where Juzo loses a scar. But Kenzo has, like, his heel turn. And I guess they kind of explain it, but go on.
Yeah, the thing with, like, especially with, like, Kenzo's heel turn is that in that moment, like, the reason why there is a ghost of Tetsuya, like, it makes you think, okay, the assumption probably is that Tetsuya died. How did he die? Well, it was a heroic sacrifice, as he basically realized as much that Kenzo pretty much combined himself with, like, turned himself into a Kedora cyborg or whatever it was, I think, or something like that. And it's crazy, too, as you, like, see in this flashback as well, like, even, like, when this heel turn is happening, you do see, he had Viscount Pigment already completed, as well as Ashura, and Brocken as well, although I think he wasn't fully activated yet, which is why his head is in a jar and asleep. But it does lead to, like, a tearful goodbye. As it turns out, Tsubasa was the one that had to kill Tetsuya because he got close enough to Kenzo to, like, try and, like, pin him down, although he did get impaled in the process. Like, Energy holding them both against the rock face, and Tetsuya just screaming to shoot. And she does. Yeah. She loses them. She escapes with Juzo. She also learns after the fact that apparently all this time, he was her long-lost brother.
Yeah, that's not a great way to find out.
Yeah, not a good time for Koji to find out that his deceased uncle was the greatest robot pilot ever, at least according to Baron Ashura. Yeah, but speaking of Ashura, even during this whole time, you're starting to see things where it is like, as Tsubasa is just pouring out all of, like, these horrible truths, it's like you're starting to notice something weird in Ashura's behavior as well, where they seem to be actively egging her on about, like, more, like, tell us more, come clean with the truth, where is Zeus's arm, you must tell us where. And then, surprise, what a twist, Ashura was Pigman the entire time. Fucker gets stabbed.
And not only does he get stabbed, but we get some great faces from Tsubasa this entire time.
Even with, like, the fucking bags under her eyes and lack of makeup, it is like she is just gloating. Because, this is a very subtle detail that you won't catch the first time you watch it. It's like they are talking about their memories and the fact that, like, when it came to the end of the previous story arc, when they were inside the pillar, like Koji, Tsubasa, and Ashura, is that they weren't just seeing their own memories themselves. It's like all of their combined memories were basically being, like, projected, like, to all of them at once. So they became very aware enough of like what everyone was really going on about. I mean, like, it's why Koji is not present during that confession, probably because deep down he already knows that that's what happened.
Yeah.
You know, he's got to fight Energer in the meantime. But Ashura, like, because of like all the extra stuff that Tsubasa's talking about and acting like they also know, even though it's like that memory wasn't present in the pillar. There's no way you could have known. Like, that was basically all she needed to know. This was Pigman's doing. Ashura was never here. Fucking stab him and then just be like, well, since you sure got one on me with this fucking curse, so I guess I'll give you a reward. Here's Zeus's arm, and its name is God Scrander.
Oh man, this is like another strong like ending to an episode too. Just Tsubasa's entire speech, just the way she's emoting and everything. It's just.
And we now get into part 3 where everything comes together and everyone comes back. Because guess what? The Kurigane 5 are alive. They were dead but got better, bitches.
Did you really think they'd die forever? Did anyone think they would actually die?
No, definitely not. I do love how, like, they're all still bandaged up and have, like, you know, like, they're still recovering to an extent. But Jago is the one that is, like, the most fucked up because it's just full mummy bandage the entire way.
Yeah. They probably just wanted to fit his aesthetics, but yeah.
But alas, Pigman escapes by basically shedding his skin to reveal, like, his true form, escapes. And then, as it turns out, Kenzo wasn't actually in Energer this whole time. That was actually Brocken. Real good impression, all the same. Although before Pigman manages to escape, all the same, Shiro does manage to get one good punch in on him. Yeah. So hell yeah, you're doing good, little bro.
This is why you've never been a shit kid, Shiro. You're one of the few good kids.
Eventually, you might grow up to have your own robot, but it'll still be a while. At least you can help out in other ways.
Yeah.
It's so cathartic getting to part 3 because after 2 episodes of build up and dramatics, like, this episode is all about the payoff.
Oh yeah,
because the jig is up. You know, Pigman's plan has already been completely revealed, and Tsubasa decides to be like, fine, you want Zeus's arm? I'm going to show it right now, but not give it to you. And like, everything is escalating because we got mechanical beasts en masse heading for the Photon Power Labs, but hey, now we got the Mazinger army making their grand debut. The finished versions of those specific robots showing up, all specializing in one of Mazinger's, like, 3 key abilities and just decimating them. Even if they don't get much use overall, it's like it's great to have them here because you got to have everyone that is possibly still alive for the grand finale when that turns up, because this is episode 21.
We are building up to that finale here.
And like, as things are escalating, like, I still fucking love the reveal of Zeus's arm because it is so irresponsibly dangerous the way that it emerges. Because first it causes a photon power fissure that almost causes Sayaka and Professor Yumi's car to, like, careen off the road.
Yeah. It's like, oh.
And then, like, and that's because the arm is literally going underground to where Z is out in the bay in front of Atami before it, like, opens up its hand and basically grabs a Z itself, absorbs with it. You get a brief flash of Mazinger Z, like, coming face to face with Zeus, getting a new power. And then, as it turns out, someone else is back from the grave. It's ultra gorgeous computer grandpa Juzo Kabuto in digital assistant form.
When we say everybody's back, we need everybody's back. Even Juzo, who even gave himself a little wire tail and all these beeping noises he makes when he moves. Fucking computer gramps.
I'm glad that we are in agreement that this is the greatest version of Juzo Kabuto.
Oh, by far.
Even before he turned into the ultra gorgeous computer grandpa, even when he was alive, you know, the stuff you get to see him do in the flashbacks through, like, the Bardos expedition and even, like, in the early episodes, is like, he's a great grandpa.
Yeah, it's like, okay.
No delusions of world conquest and mad science.
No, it's so funny, like, how we got, like, 2 new Mazinger media happening at the same time, and they both went into, like, completely different ways, where, like, one is like, what if Juzo was actually a good guy, and what if Mazinger was, like, more of a god instead of a devil? And I think it really works out for all of this.
Definitely. And like after that whole reveal and getting Koji all ready for like one big final attack to like basically repel this attack from Brocken and Pigman, least of all due to the fact that now that the jig is up, their last ditch attempt is to just have Energy Z self-destruct.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't want a photon powered super robot like that to blow up. That's probably worse than a nuke. What do? Well, this isn't the first time it happens. We mentioned as much for the purpose of the discussion. This episode does another of its patented jump to the aftermath of whatever the fuck happened before actually explaining it.
Yep.
In this case, it's why Atami is an absolute fucking wreck now. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it is. A lot of stuff happened and we don't know what happened yet.
At least the Kurogane house is still standing, and it seems to be getting new patrons, or not patrons, but some new hired help as Django, whose main job, like when working at the Kurogane house, is to basically be the bus driver that brings tourists and other guests from like outside of the town, like from the outskirts, all the way to the Kurogane house. Mm-hmm. So he's just bringing like clearly more than what can be held in that fucking bus, in that fucking van, an entire town's worth of thugs.
It's like
but at least they're on our side, and they have their own super alloy weapons as well. One of which includes a toothpick.
Of course it does. This is just like I've noticed, like this show like really revels in its absurdness in a lot of ways, like with the drama and the comedy. But I noticed like, they don't have the Go Nagai violence. I mean, probably because it's TV anime, but I think that's probably for the best. I can't imagine like a hyper violent version of this.
Oh yeah, no, like it's not gonna get into like any of like the grosser violent stuff that you sometimes end up seeing. Like, I mean, even when it came to like the Gamiya Q3 episode for this anime in particular, I think they even leaned into the fact that like the Gamiyas themselves are way more like ball jointed dolls instead of like humans that are clearly like artificial, but they still bleed like human.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of Gamiya, yeah, she's back as Inspector Ankokuchi's assistant. She got reprogrammed to be one of the good guys.
Yeah.
But she's still no nonsense, and she will strip you of your clothes if you so much as infuriate her. Mm-hmm. It really is a shameless school, huh? As they say, to get a nice reference to Harenshi Gakuen. So as everyone's celebrating at the onsen, you get to see Tsubasa go to the Powder's hangar, where obviously Computer Gramps is still hanging out. The two of them have a nice chat, and that's when you finally get our flashback to what happened, like in between Koji getting swallowed up by Zeus's arm to saving, in quotes, Atami, I guess. How do they stop Energy Z? So, as silly as the idea might sound, I do enjoy how fitting it is that the one time we decided to give Mazinger a transformation mechanism is one that turns it into a giant rocket punch. This is what the God Scrander does, ladies and gentlemen. It's more than just a Scrander. This is what we've been saving up for. Because the Scrander, it has like these kind of curved wings to it, but what it also has is like two like kind of like cylinders kind of in between the wings that look suspiciously like the same color contrast as Mazinger's arms. And that is because with Mazinger's main arms, the two auxiliary arms, and then the head flipping on itself to reveal a fifth arm, the arms themselves jointed to be like fingers, and the wings close on themselves to look like forearms. That is how you get the ultimate attack of Shin Mazinger Z. Shine in the name of Zeus. Smash everything to atoms. Big Bang Punch!
And fucking smash he does, because you get the big rocket punch hit, and then you get to zoom out onto like it's like space, and you get to see the explosion, and it's so fucking good. Holy shit!
This is the only time we are ever going to go into space, and that is just to watch the size of the explosion from orbit.
Yeah. And God, this is such a galaxy brain idea. It's like, What's Mazinger's most iconic move? A rocket punch. Okay. What if he turns into a fist himself? Or wait, what if he fires like 100 rocket punches? Which he does.
Yep. Yeah, that's what happens in the finale. And all this still within the realm of this is a battle taking place in this one Japanese town.
Yeah.
And the even better part about the Big Bang Punch and like its origins, this is where we finally come full circle on mentioning all the different like inspirations and deep cut pulls that this anime has made. You remember I mentioned that there was a canceled Mazinger series that was planned where the Big Bang Punch was apparently originated from.
I remember.
Well, turns out in the mid-'80s, there was a point where we could have gotten a Mazinger Z OVA through the lens of like a lot of the mecha design trends of that decade. You know, like a Mazinger in the middle of the Gundam boom, in OVA directed by Masami Obari.
Whoa! Oh, I didn't know about that. Holy moly! Can you fucking imagine?
This was called Dai Mazinger. You know, DAI,
yeah.
almost like another way of saying great,
Yes.
essentially. But the only reason this never got off the ground is that it technically did get permission from Dynamic Pro, but this was still kind of in that period where like the exclusive animation rights were still held by Toei, despite you know them and Dynamic Pro not being on speaking terms anymore. So really, Dynamic Pro shot the whole idea down, and it's weird because like it sounds awesome, but the more I have heard about Dai Mazinger and looked at it, especially with some of the designs, it's like this would be like really jarring to think about because this is a super robot which we have always seen in the same vein as like classic 70s robot designs. You know, even when they're quote unquote modernized, they still share a lot of the same like aesthetics and like broad aesthetics and silhouettes. You know, like even with Grendizer U being as modern as it is, still looks like something that is like not too far off from its 70s counterpart.
Right, yeah.
But the Mazinger in this OVA would have looked so much more like a real robot despite sharing like the same core silhouette and color scheme as Mazinger that I'm like, I feel like I would have been having a crisis of identity looking at it.
Right, it wouldn't be what we think of when we think of Mazinger. It'd be something completely different.
It would at least be fascinating from like an academic standpoint, but I would not have been surprised if it came out and despite the pedigree it would have had, if it got treated as like a weird black sheep because people would look at it as like, why is Mazinger trying to fucking like adapt itself to the modern trends of something that it's not, you know?
Yeah, it'd just be kind of weird, I think. Like, I'd still like to see it.
Especially because we had like in the 80s there was Dan Kuga already, which was very super robot coded in like narrative,
right?
But that robot does not look anything like it came from the 70s.
No, it doesn't.
But the fact it was in the 80s, you know, obviously with real robot mechanisms being incorporated, that also meant, hey, what else was popular along with like Gundam style robots in the 80s? Transforming robots.
Right, yeah.
That's where Big Bang Punch came from. That's why they had the original idea. And the only reason it was able to make it from that canceled OVA to Shin Mazinger is because of one person that was shared between the production of these two. And that was one of the mecha designers.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
He held on to that idea for 2+ decades, and he finally got it to pay off in fucking 2009. And even better, that same designer, this gets back to how much we lament that we don't have a Shin grade Mazinger. Obviously, this is going to be like in the supplementary images, but just because I have it on hand, I'm going to share it with you in our Discord call right now, just so you can see what I am talking about. It is a production sketch sheet for what grade Mazinger would have looked like in general. And
oh my God.
Naturally, the core silhouette would look a lot like how it always did in the manga. Even down to the fact that, you know, Brain Condor would be exactly the same. The Scrander Cross would be exactly the same. But we already gave a new Scrander to Koji that turns it into a giant rocket punch. What kind of equivalent can we give Tetsuya with Great Mazinger? Well, by combining it with a new device, probably a new version of the Great Booster, because even in the 70s, Great Mazinger already had 2 different Scranders it could combine with. Just make a new Great Booster, that fuck it doesn't just turn it into a big big bang punch. It turns it into a big bang iron cutter.
That fucking rules. Oh my god, I am so much sadder now too. I would love to see that.
Here's the kicker. Yeah. It's the left hand of Zeus.
Oh my god. Oh, that's so good.
This is actually what frustrates me the more I realize about this, is that the concept of both Mazingers, like Z and Great, being the right and left hand of Zeus is an idea that they actually used to frame those two in Super Robot Wars X.
Yeah, that's...
But they didn't give him a big bang punch! What the fuck are you doing, Ben Presto?
We could have had a combination attack with them attacking with both fists. Can you imagine how that would have looked like in action? Oh my god.
Oh, that'd be so good. Yeah. But then again, I suppose it was the sort of thing where, like, this was this one particular, like, designer's idea, and I believe it was only ever made publicly known, like, well after the fact. Like, I think it was included as, like, a single page in, like, a Mazinger-related, like, fan works book. Oh. Like, kind of one of those, like, collections of, like, illustrations or whatever. Yeah. Like, this is the only image we have of anything that came from original staff members of what they were possibly going to do for Shin Mazinger. And really, like, I think what's extra frustrating is how it's like, we really have not heard anything from Yasuhiro Imagawa in a long fucking time. Like, he's still alive. You just don't hear anything anymore of, like, if he's directing anything new or working on anything. Yeah. Really.
Which is a shame. I would have loved to see what, like, kind of new thing he'd make. But also, that man is kind of tight-lipped, because I know even, like, with Shin Robo Armageddon, he was like, he never shared what his plans were. We'll just never know.
Yeah, he never left behind an outline, which obviously hindered the rest of the plot of that OVA, because they had to take it in a completely different direction. But I mean, I don't know. It's weird. I would love to just be like, just have the opportunity to get him in a room and, like, to kind of talk about his contributions to the genre, and just try desperately, even if it is in vain, to prod him on, like, okay, but Shin Mazinger Shougeki, Z-Hen, what would that have been? Please.
What are you going to do? Great
I won't ask you about the other 6 chapters of your 7-part story that comprises the giant Robo OVA universe. I'll let that slide. Just let me have this.
Yeah, please. Just tell us if you're going to make a Grendizer too. I should get Riser.
Oh, that'd be amazing. But man, we really went off track. We didn't even talk about, like, how the episode actually ends. Yeah, but I think it's clear what it's building up to with everyone coming together at the Kurogane house is that everyone's getting ready for war. You get, like, one final conversation between Tsubasa and Koji, basically kind of like a very humble admission on Koji's part about, like, kind of recognizing Tsubasa, that, like, yeah, he never really acknowledged her as, like, his parent, or like even really wanted to. It was constantly being stubborn the whole way, that he kind of realized, you really are amazing. I lost to you. And even showing that at the very end, like, the fact that Tsubasa had enough of a plan in mind that, as far as, like, how to deal with this curse, is that when she saw Tetsuya's ghost, she knew instinctively deep down that it was, like, especially with how Tetsuya is just kind of staring blank-faced, is like, his ghost wasn't showing up to, like, basically make her feel guilty, because she knows that, like, he told her to shoot him, like, when he was in that moment in order to kill Kenzo because of his betrayal. But now that we know that it's, like, Kenzo apparently is still alive, like, the inspector told Tsubasa as much, because, like, in an earlier story arc, Anku Koji went missing and was apparently saved by Kenzo. So it led to this whole thing where now it's like, well, if Kenzo's alive, maybe there's a chance Tetsuya is as well. And it changes the context of Tetsuya's ghost, where instead of showing up to, like, judge, like, the person that is being cursed, his ghost is there instead to act as a warning, to be like, hey, they're coming for Zeus's arm. You know what you need to do.
Yeah.
And even as, like, as you get to, like, the final shot, and everyone is, like, looking outside the inn and just being like, Dr. Hell's coming. We gotta be ready. And even, like, all this time, like, Tetsuya's ghost was still there, but as the music is swelling up at the end, you see his ghost finally fade away, finally being at peace. until we get a tease of him in the final episode where he just shows up as Blade.
Yeah.
With the silhouette of Great Mazinger amidst the flames in the background.
Yeah, man. What could have been? What could have...
This anime's great. It hurts knowing there's no second season, but it's still so fucking great.
In case it wasn't obvious that we kind of love this anime and a lot of things about it, and we still recommend it, even if it ends the way it does.
That's just the way it is. I mean,
can you imagine?
Fuck, there's quite a bit of anime even today where it's like, I don't know if it's more frustrating than this actually, the fact that like there are like some animes where it's like, well, I guess it's less a matter of it's not able to continue the story and more like it's just the general frustration with the fact that like the episode counts are way too short for the stories that a lot of these shows want to tell.
Yeah.
At least with 26 episodes, Shin Mazinger Z was able to tell the story of this specific chapter.
Yeah.
It at least did that.
It did that.
And it did it so well.
Which, you know what? I'll take that. I'll take it.
Yeah. Again, if we're still able to love Giant Robo the animation as one of the all-time best OVAs, even though there are 6 other chapters in that universe that have never been animated and at this point will not, fuck it. We could celebrate something incomplete as this. Alien Soldier is an incomplete game according to Treasure, and it is still the best goddamn Genesis game ever conceived.
Yeah, even if the thing is incomplete, that doesn't stop it from being special. It can still be like, it could still be worth experiencing, just so you can get like the ideas behind it and the passion and everything.
Yeah, because again, like as far as proper Mazinger Z stories, this was the one I decided to go into first. Least of all because, like, when I built my initial list out, it was based on what was the roster of the Super Robot Wars Z games at the time. You know, Z2 specifically, as that was Shin Mazinger's debut. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, there's a Mazinger. Mazinger's supposed to be important. I'll watch that next, then work down the rest of this list.
Nice.
And then it's very clear that when I decided to do that, I peaked way fucking early because this is still the mecha anime, at least when it comes to super robots, that I judge everything by. And it is very rare for anything to ever come close to this, but it turns out there was at least one anime from last year that managed to get into the number 2 slot.
Oh, I cannot wait until we talk about that one, because if there is an anime that is like my biggest surprise of like the last decade, it's that one.
And unsurprisingly, it's the Masami Obari joint.
Yeah.
Oh, this was fun. This was... Yeah. This was as enthusiastic as I could have ever hoped for.
Yeah, but can you imagine if we ended the same way the anime does it? They just like completely cut it off and just have a anticlimactic end? Man, wouldn't that suck?